Imagine sending a really critical work question to a colleague, and you get absolutely nothing back.
Right, just total silence.
Yeah, no reply, no acknowledgement at all. So the next day you send another email. Still nothing. Then you pass them in the hallway, and they just look right through you.
It's infuriating.
It is. And the crazy part is, if you go to leadership and complain about it, you sound petty. You sound kind of paranoid, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. You sound like you're overreacting to, normal office friction.
Right. But if you ignore it, that slow, silent freeze out will literally systematically destroy your career.
It will. And, that's exactly what we are getting into today. We're looking at the sort of dark mechanics of modern office life.
Yeah, it's a heavy one, but so important.
Definitely. Our source material for this deep dive is this really extensive analysis by Marcus Hale. It was published in the Sentinel Workplace Review, and it's actually supported by the advocacy platform FG Own Your Power.
Which is a great organization, by the way.
Yeah, they do good work. Anyway, the piece is titled 7 Signs Your Workplace Has a Bullying Culture. And our mission here is to map out the exact coordinates of that invisible line. The line where an isolated conflict between two people suddenly metabolizes into a systemic, company-wide sickness.
I love that way of framing it. Because, look, almost every company handbook out there has this shiny, perfect anti-bullying policy.
Of course, they all do.
Right. But reading that policy is like looking at a restaurant menu. The descriptions of the food, they talk about teamwork, respect, integrity, it all sounds fantastic.
But it's just paper.
Exactly. The actual culture of the workplace. That is the meal that physically gets served to you at the table. And Marcus Hale makes this argument that millions of people are sitting down to a highly toxic meal, and the chef's like, the leadership are just completely unaware of what's leaving their own kitchen.
Yeah, they're totally blind to it. And to understand why leaders miss this so often, we really have to look at the data Hale pulls from the Workplace Bullying Institute.
What do they say?
Well, their research kind of dismantles that classic Hollywood villain trope. Workplace bullying does not survive because executives are sitting in these dark boardrooms actively plotting to make their employees miserable.
Right, it's not a comic book.
Exactly. It survives and thrives in ambiguity. It grows so fast in those gray areas of daily interaction where aggressive behaviors are basically calibrated to be just subtle enough to be ignored.
Or explained away by management.
Yes, exactly.
Which honestly brings us to the very first point of failure that Hale talks about, the misdiagnosis.
Right. Sign 1 in the article.
Yeah. He explores how leadership actively misinterprets these early warning signs. And they do it mostly to avoid the sheer discomfort of dealing with the root problem.
Because nobody likes conflict.
Nobody.
No.
So let's look at what happens the moment a targeted employee finally speaks up. Manager listens to the complaint, about repeated exclusion or hostility, and they just nod and go, well, it sounds like you two have a personal issue.
Man, that phrase, a personal issue. Framing abuse like that is basically a managerial defense mechanism.
How so?
Well, on the surface, it masquerades as this neutral, objective stance, right? Like the manager is just staying out of it. But structurally, it completely absolves leadership of any operational responsibility.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
By declaring it a two-way street, the manager takes the heavy burden of conflict resolution and places it squarely on the shoulders of the victim.
They're essentially telling the target, hey, your inability to tolerate this mistreatment is actually the real problem here.
Precisely. It's incredibly damaging.
But, okay, I got to put myself in the shoes of a manager right now, and I have to push back a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
If I manage, say, 20 people, there's going to be friction.
Of course.
Like if I have one employee who is highly structured and really rigid, and another who is highly creative and, let's say, chaotic,
Yeah.
they're going to drive each other crazy.
Without a doubt.
They're going to complain about each other. So how does a manager separate normal, messy human friction from, a massive cultural red flag of bullying? Because it feels dangerous to launch a full HR investigation every time two people just rub each other the wrong way.
No, that's a really fair point. And Hale addresses this. He says the distinction really lies in asymmetry.
Asymmetry. Okay, write that down.
So a personality clash, like your structured versus creative example, that's symmetrical. Both parties are annoyed, both are contributing to the friction, but there is no underlying intent to, destroy the other person's standing in the company.
Right, they just annoy each other.
Exactly. But Hale's piece emphasizes that true bullying is fundamentally asymmetrical. The manager has to look for a pattern of targeted behavior.
Ah, the pattern.
Right. Is one person consistently deploying manipulation? Is one person systematically being excluded from critical communications? By quickly writing it all off as just a personal issue without actually investigating that asymmetry, leaders are basically prioritizing their own comfort over the truth.
They are dodging a complex behavioral investigation.
Exactly. They're taking the easy way out.
And I mean, the immediate consequence of that dodge is that the problem just goes subterranean.
It goes completely underground.
Yeah. Like, if I go to my boss and report that a colleague is actively sabotaging my project data, and my boss just tells me I need to work out my personal differences, I am never reporting anything to that manager ever again.
No, why would you?
The reporting mechanism is just totally broken at that point.
It is. And the tragic part is, the silence that follows is almost always misread by leadership as a victory.
Oh my gosh, you're right. The manager assumes, oh, the conflict resolved itself because they stopped complaining to me.
Exactly. When in reality, the toxic behavior just secured its foothold. The organization has tacitly signaled to the bully that, hey, there are no guardrails here.
Wow.
And worse, they've signaled to the target that they are entirely unprotected.
Which really sets the stage for Sign 2. The dynamic shifts from a localized two-person conflict into this much broader organizational narrative.
The problem employee label.
Yes. Hale outlines this phenomenon, where the bully doesn't just attack the target directly anymore. They manipulate the surrounding environment. So suddenly, the targeted employee isn't just dealing with one bad actor. They are repeatedly labeled by the rest of the department as, the problem employee.
Right. They become known as difficult or too sensitive or disruptive.
Yeah, and we are entering the psychology of group dynamics here.
Right. Big time. The analysis introduces this concept of mobbing.
Mobbing, like a mob.
Exactly. It's a severe form of group bullying where multiple individuals actively participate in targeting one person. But the really insidious mechanism of mobbing is how effortlessly it recruits unaware participants.
Right, because people don't wake up and say, I'm going to join a bullying mob today.
No, not at all. Many people joining the mob genuinely do not realize they're participating in bullying. They just think they are managing a difficult colleague.
Because they have blindly adopted the bully's narrative.
Precise.
I mean, think about it. The bully plants a seed at the water cooler. They do a little dramatic sigh and say, is Sarah always this defensive when you ask for updates?
Just a casual little remark.
Right, but it acts like a filter.
Yeah.
Suddenly, everyone is viewing Sarah's completely normal, everyday behavior through this horribly biased lens.
Yeah.
So if Sarah asks a simple clarifying question in a meeting, it's no longer just a question. To the group, it's proof of her quote-unquote defensiveness.
It relies heavily on confirmation bias. Hale points this out so well. The consistency of the criticism becomes its own evidence, regardless of whether the initial premise was totally manufactured.
Wow, that's terrifying.
It is. And Hale points out a vital diagnostic tool for healthy organizations here. In a functioning environment, different people struggle with different challenges at different times, right?
Yeah, obviously.
But if one single individual is consistently identified as the root cause of every single departmental friction, leadership should see a massive red flag.
Right, that does not indicate a terrible employee. It indicates a constructed narrative.
Exactly. But the reputational damage becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy anyway.
Yeah, because the target gets defensive, because they're constantly under attack,
Right.
which the group then points to and says, see, look how difficult they are to work with.
It's a closed-loop system of madness. You aren't even fighting a coworker anymore. You are fighting a phantom perception that has infected the whole department.
And that collective judgment just provides the perfect camouflage for the primary bully. They don't even have to lift a finger anymore.
No, the culture they engineered is doing all the heavy lifting for them now. It isolates the target organically.
So let's shift from the psychological framing to the tactical execution on the ground. Because when we think of workplace bullying, pop culture gives us these really dramatic images, right?
Yeah, people screaming in hallways or like throwing staplers.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But Hale focuses on signs 4 and 5, which are all about subtle daily interactions. It's not a screaming match. It's what I would call like a carbon monoxide leak.
That is the perfect analogy. The tactics are deliberately calibrated to be incredibly hard to prove. Bullies use tools that operate just below the threshold of formal policy violations.
Right?
We are talking about sarcastic remarks that are immediately followed by, oh, come on, I was just joking, or dismissive body language, eye rolling during a presentation.
And the unanswered message, which is sign 5, is the perfect example of this carbon monoxide leak.
Yeah.
Going back to that scenario we opened with, if you send an email and someone doesn't answer it, honestly, that is just a busy Tuesday.
Right. We all miss emails.
We do. But 100 unanswered emails over a 6-month period, that is a coordinated, deliberate freeze-out designed to literally starve you of the information you need to do your job.
It is the ultimate exercise in plausible deniability. Because if the target takes those unanswered emails to HR, the bully has a built-in alibi.
Oh, my inbox is a disaster.
Exactly. Or, oh, sorry, I thought we covered that in passing. And evaluated in isolation, each incident just looks like a minor administrative oversight.
And HR departments usually evaluate incidents in isolation, don't they?
Yes, that's the flaw in the system. They look at a single event and determine, well, it doesn't violate a specific conduct code. They completely miss the cumulative velocity of the behavior.
So the pattern remains totally invisible to the formal HR framework.
Yeah.
But the target, they are experiencing the full crushing weight of it every single hour of the workday.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
And this covert hostility, it doesn't just happen quietly over email. It gets dragged right into the center of the office.
Which brings us to sign 4, how this passive aggression manifests in team meetings, specifically through the weaponization of silence.
Oh, the conference room. That is where these dominance displays become most observable.
How does it usually play out?
Well, a targeted employee will share an idea or propose a solution, and the room either responds with dead silence or a manager just swiftly dismisses it as unworkable.
Right.
So the conversation moves on. But then maybe 10 minutes later, a different employee, often the bully or someone firmly in their inner circle, they pitch the exact same concept, maybe using slightly different vocabulary.
Exactly. And suddenly, the room lights up. It's heralded as this brilliant strategy, and the second person receives all the credit.
I really want you, the listener, to think about your own team meetings for a second. Just visualize the room you sit in every week. Who speaks freely? Whose ideas consistently fall flat or get talked over?
It's a really revealing exercise.
Who interrupts and who gets interrupted? Hale notes that when this happens repeatedly, the targeted employee just stops trying. I mean, why continue throwing your intellectual capital against a brick wall?
Right. Silence replaces their engagement.
And the organizational cost of that silence is just staggering.
It's huge. Companies dedicate massive resources to acquiring talent, only to allow a single bully's need for control to dictate who is actually allowed to contribute.
Right. The organization just bleeds innovation.
They lose critical problem-solving perspectives and risk identification simply because leadership is, hyper-focused on the agenda and the PowerPoint slides.
While remaining completely blind to the social chess game happening around the table.
Exactly. We obsess over the metrics of the meeting, but we ignore the human mechanics driving it.
Which brings us to a terrifying question, honestly. What is everybody else doing while this is happening?
Yeah, the bystanders.
Right, sign 6. We have established that this behavior is highly visible in group settings. The freeze-out happens in plain sight. So if you are sitting in that meeting and you watch a colleague's idea get stolen, or you see them getting systematically isolated, why wouldn't you intervene?
The instinct is to assume that people who don't intervene are simply apathetic or even malicious. But the article really leans on the psychology of the bystander effect.
Like the Kitty Genovese case.
Yes, Hale specifically points to that foundational case. The core finding of that research is that the presence of other people actually decreases the likelihood that any single individual will act in an emergency.
It's a diffusion of responsibility.
Exactly. Everyone assumes someone else will report it, so no one does.
But in a corporate environment, I feel like it goes far beyond just assuming someone else will handle it. It's deeply rooted in fear and self-preservation.
Oh, absolutely.
You are watching the reputational destruction of a colleague in real time. You see the mobbing. You see the coordinated narrative turning them into a pariah. The internal monologue of a bystander isn't, "I don't care."
No.
It's, "If I stand up for them, I am going to be the next target.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. To align yourself with a target who has been socially marked for destruction by a powerful bully, that is committing career suicide within that specific ecosystem.
Wow.
The target is left in profound isolation because the social dynamics of the office have made empathy and intervention feel actively dangerous to everyone else. The entire immune system of the department has just been compromised.
And Hale argues that breaking this bystander effect is basically impossible without overwhelming institutional support.
You can't expect people to risk their jobs.
Exactly. You cannot expect mid-level employees to fall on their swords and risk their livelihoods if the organization has a proven track record of labeling these issues as just personal conflicts.
Right. If there is no safe channel for reporting and no guarantee of leadership backing, the silence just becomes the permanent soundtrack of the department.
And when that silence becomes intolerable, we see sign 3, the ultimate symptom of the contagion, the quiet exodus.
Yet people just leave.
High-performing employees, the exact people the organization desperately wants to retain, they do not stick around to fight a rigged battle. They have the skills to go elsewhere, so they do.
But here is the twist. When they sit down for their exit interview with HR, they do not tell the truth.
Oh, never.
They do not say, hey, I am leaving because the senior project manager is a manipulative bully who steals ideas and orchestrates freeze-outs.
No. They smile and say, I was offered a tremendous career opportunity, or I'm just looking for a new challenge.
Because they have to lie to protect their own future. They need a favorable reference. They understand that being a quote-unquote whistleblower on a toxic culture on their way out the door offers zero benefit to them.
Right. And it carries massive reputational risk.
Exactly. So they secure their exit, but in doing so, their silence inadvertently protects the bully. The cycle is perfectly preserved for whoever gets hired to fill that empty desk next.
And Hale drops a massive financial reality check for any executives parsing this data.
Oh, the replacement costs.
Yes. The cost of replacing a single employee when you factor in recruitment, onboarding, training, and the loss of institutional knowledge, it ranges from 50% to 200% of their annual salary.
It is a phenomenal waste of capital. Organizations are hemorrhaging financial resources to subsidize toxic behavior.
But leadership doesn't see it that way.
No, their blind spot is that they tend to view turnover as a natural consequence of the modern job market. Like, oh, people just move around.
Right. But if they shifted their perspective and analyzed turnover as a direct symptom of an environment driving talent away, the true exorbitant cost of the bullying culture would become undeniable.
Okay.
So we have traced almost the entire life cycle here. The misdiagnosed conflict, the coordinated group narrative, the covert passive aggression, the silence in meetings, the bystander paralysis, and the quiet exodus.
It's a lot.
It is. But what happens to the target who cannot leave? The person who endures that carbon monoxide leak for months or even years until they finally hit their absolute breaking point.
Yeah, this brings us to sign 7, the final and arguably most insidious stage Hale identifies.
Tone policing.
Tone policing. Explain how that works here.
Tone policing is basically the ultimate mechanism of institutional gaslighting. When a target finally reaches the end of their psychological endurance, they react. They're human.
So they might send an email that is blunt and frustrated. Their voice might shake in a meeting. They might finally raise their voice and demand the behavior stop. And then they take this reaction, along with the whole history of the abuse, to leadership.
And the logical response from leadership should be, oh my gosh, what on earth has been happening to push you to this extreme emotional state?
Exactly. But instead, the response is almost always a critique of the delivery.
You need to lower your voice.
Yes. Your email was highly unprofessional. Or, you are making people on the team really uncomfortable right now.
It's so twisted. Leadership entirely divorces the reaction from the provocation.
Completely. By hyper-focusing on how the complaint is delivered, they successfully avoid engaging with what the complaint actually alleges.
Wow.
They demand this impossible standard of emotional detachment from someone who has been subjected to sustained psychological wear and tear.
The logic is completely inverted. The emotional response is the direct result of the prolonged mistreatment. It is not the cause of the workplace friction.
Right.
Like, if a manager ignores a dripping pipe in the ceiling for 6 months and the ceiling finally caves in and destroys the office, you don't write up the ceiling for having a bad attitude.
No, you don't.
The collapse was the inevitable result of the neglect.
That's a great way to put it. Tone policing flips the script entirely. It puts the victim on trial for their reaction, forcing them into a defensive posture.
And it sends a chilling message to everyone else.
Yes, it tells the broader organization the actual bullying is not the problem. Your inability to calmly endure the bullying is the problem.
Yeah.
It engineers a system where leadership only has to process perfectly calm, sanitized reports of abuse, which, by definition, basically never exist in severe bullying environments. Demanding that victims package their suffering in a polite, measured tone is just a profound exercise in control.
When you lay out the entire architecture of this culture, you really see how an organization can be completely hollowed out from the inside while maintaining this perfectly polished exterior.
Yeah, it's a facade.
And as we synthesize Marcus Hale's work and the mission of the advocacy group FG Own Your Power, the core objective really becomes clear here. It is about education.
100%.
It is about taking these invisible, highly effective mechanisms of manipulation and just dragging them out into the light.
Because bullying relies on darkness and ambiguity. Once a workforce is educated on these specific patterns, once they actually have vocabulary for mobbing and tone policing and plausible deniability, the bully loses their primary weapon.
So behaviors can no longer be passed off as mere personal friction.
Exactly. Education empowers the collective to recognize the tactics in real time, allowing them to dismantle the coordinated narrative before it takes root.
It reestablishes the immune system of the department.
Yes.
It gives the bystanders the language they need to intervene without feeling like they're stepping into a subjective, messy personal dispute. They aren't picking sides. They're calling out a recognized behavioral pattern.
And Hale concludes his piece with a really powerful defining thesis. He says a healthy workplace is not an environment devoid of conflict. Conflict is inevitable when humans collaborate.
Right. We're going to disagree.
Exactly. A healthy workplace is defined entirely by how leadership responds to that conflict. The culture of an organization is not determined by the aspirational values printed in the handbook. The culture is defined by the worst behavior that leadership is willing to tolerate.
Once a company allows the carbon monoxide leak to become the normal atmosphere of the office, the baseline is completely reset.
And reversing that normalization is a monumental, often impossible task. The toxic meal has already been served, and unfortunately, everyone is forced to eat it.
Which is why early recognition, before the behavior metastasizes into a coordinated narrative, is literally the only effective intervention.
Absolutely.
Well, we've established the terrifying efficiency of these covert tactics today. Unanswered emails, weaponized silence, plausible deniability. These are behaviors specifically engineered to leave no trace.
There are ghosts in the machine.
But if you look at the architecture of traditional formal HR reporting systems, they are built on industrial-era logic. They demand concrete proof. They require paper trails, explicit policy breaches, and undeniable evidence of misconduct.
Which these tactics avoid by design.
Exactly. So here is a final provocative thought to turn over in your mind during your commute or your next team meeting. If a bullying culture survives entirely by operating in the gray areas of psychological manipulation, are our rigid, evidence-obsessed HR systems unintentionally designed to act as the ultimate shield for the bully rather than a lifeline for the victim?
Wow, it really forces us to question the very infrastructure we rely on for workplace justice. Because if the system is only calibrated to catch overt harassment, it is entirely blind to the quiet devastation of a bullying culture.
Keep your eyes open to the dynamics around you and own your power out there. We will see you on the next deep dive.